What's up guys, JS2Cents here, and we're at CES 2021. NZXT's starter PC series now starts at $699 and gives you everything you need to get into the world of PC. Available in multiple configurations, the starter PC can be tailored to meet your budget and needs and are the perfect way to build a work or learn from home setup while still being capable of 1080p 60 FPS gaming and popular titles like Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege, and League of Legends. All of NZXT PCs come backed with a 2-year warranty on parts, labor, and RAM overclocking, helping to guarantee the best gaming possible for your build. To see the full list of specs and pricing on the NZXT Starter PC series, click the link in the description below. All right, I'm gonna level with you. This is the best CES I've ever attended. You know, you do it once, fun, you do it twice, it's cool. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth time, it's just like, bruh. Don't consider this truly CES coverage, just consider this sort of tech news, and the things that I think are worth talking about, I will. As you can imagine, we've been invited to all sorts of like digital conferences and have online digital meetings and one-on-ones, and you know, I decided not to sign up for any of that stuff because the thing about CES is at least most of the time when we have our private booth meetings and stuff, we can get hands-on and touch and feel and show, and I feel like something at least comes of being able to touch a product that is just seeing it online. It just doesn't have the same luster, I guess, if you will. But this is interesting because one of the things that we got wind of a few weeks back is that Intel was going to be launching its new 11th gen processor, codenamed Rocket Lake, at CES 2021. And that was interesting to us because of the fact that we knew that it wasn't supposed to be coming out until about March. So it's obvious that AMD over the 2020 and 2019 and just the forward momentum and like that constant march of AMD CPUs just encroaching on Intel's market share. And to be honest, Intel's still dominant on the market share, but AMD being threatening like they are is clearly the reason why they pulled it in like they did. Now, they've, in typical Intel fashion, they're launching, I was gonna say 11th and launching at the same time. They're launching 11th gen mostly through their laptop SKUs, through the H series SKUs, and then we've got one SKU to talk about for desktop. So on a high level here, they're launching a new Pentium and they're launching a new Celeron, which are specifically for mobile computing, netbooks, notebooks, laptops, and each one of those names I just said actually have a different kind of a design use case of what a laptop should be and what a netbook should be and all of that. But they're about ultra efficiency, low battery consumption, high computing, because those are actually being advertised as being on their 11th gen 10 nanometer process. And we were like, okay, 10 nanometer, which for the longest time they said they couldn't do or wouldn't do or for whatever reason, now at least has like a face to it, right? Pentium, Celeron, fine, it is what it is. And I could see why they would want that process increase or that process size decrease on laptops because it's all about efficiency and power consumption and all of that. I'm not gonna really go too much into the laptop stuff because a lot of the stuff with laptops, although exciting to me, there's too much SI involvement on how the laptop performs. We know what the CPUs are being touted as being capable of, but every SI is gonna have a different power profile, they're gonna have different laptop setups, different manufacturers in terms of the motherboards are gonna be designed, the power delivery, so there's a lot of interference of how the CPU can actually perform based on the SI. So I'm not gonna go into that, but I wanted to make you guys aware at least that 10th gen does now have a name with it. It's Pentium and Celeron, which is fine. But let's get to the part that and it's Pentium Silver, by the way, is what they're calling it. So that's probably because there's probably gonna be a gold for desktop. Pentium has always had a desktop variant as well. But before we get into the desktop stuff, which I know you guys obviously are mostly interested in, they are talking about the new Core H series, which is, you know, I said that there's Pentium and the Celeron, then there's H series, and then we're gonna have the desktop series. H series is what they call their top tier CPU variants for laptops. And they do talk about here new i7s and i5s, up to 5.3 gigahertz on laptops. So if the SI intervention that I mentioned, if the power current is there, if the power plug is plugged in, you're never gonna get these clocks on battery. If it's plugged in, you're seeing a 10870H and a 10500H available for up to 5.3 gigahertz and 8-core 16-thread variants. So now we're seeing the shrunken process, the lateral growth of core count that we've seen on desktop now make its way to laptops to where you're probably going to see quite a few of these 10th gen laptops be faster than many people's desktops these days, depending on how old your desktop is. Of course, the 5.3 gigahertz is going to be single core. Who knows how far down that's going to come when it comes to multi-core. Of course, you've got we dub it the turbo timer, which is essentially how long it'll hold those boost clocks, because it's not just temperature and power draw, it's also duration is a factor there. So it's pretty obvious now that we're seeing the larger 10th gen processors make their way to laptops just in time for the 11th gen more efficient stuff to come out. So now it's going to be like, if you want fast, it's previous gen, more cores, and then if you want efficient, it's the newest 10 nanometer stuff on the 8 series for efficiency on laptops. Enough about that. Let's go ahead and talk about the Intel Core 11th gen. There's one SKU, the i9-11900k. The 11th gen Core i9-11900k, which is their new flagship model, is boasting up to 19% IPC improvement over 10th gen 10900k at the same clock speeds. There's no mention of a process shrink. There's no mention of whether or not this is on 10 nanometer. The only mention I have been able to find, and I have dug and scoured, and I mentioned this in our initial video where we talked about Intel's little blog posts where they were like, please don't forget about us, as 5000 series AMD CPUs were launching. And I can only find it in a handwritten email, is they said 10 nanometer ported to 14 nanometer. And I've said it then, I said it to Phil, and I said it in the video, and I'll say it now. I don't know what the hell that means, but if they're boasting up to 19% IPC improvement, something has changed with the process. Because sure, there's efficiencies and there's process improvements that you can make in terms of the same process size and the die size, but you can't necessarily get nearly 20% IPC improvement on the exact same 14 plus. I mean, please tell me they didn't add another plus to this. But one of the other curious changes here is the fact that they've dropped the flagship, the 11900K, to an 8-core 16-thread versus 10-core 20-thread found on 10th gen, making it now a direct core-to-core replacement for the 9900K. So one of the things that they provide us with this tech deck is also kind of an accompanying one sheet that sort of explains things, and not just the footnotes, but it gives you kind of these paragraphs that sort of in a nutshell describe things. And specifically what it says here is this is a preview of 11th gen, not a launch, it's a preview, although motherboard manufacturers are also launching Z590 at CES, again, because a CPU launch has to have a platform to support it, and Z590 is that. But it says here, preview of next-gen Rocket Lake and Alder Lake technologies for leadership desktop and mobile platform. I don't know where Alder Lake comes in. I don't really keep my ear to the ground listening to all these code names and where they land. I don't know if that's gonna be, it says for desktop and mobile. Alder Lake could be mobile, I don't know. It says Intel also demonstrated next generation desktop technology for gamers and enthusiasts coming to market in 11th gen Core S-series desktop processors, Rocket Lake-S, featuring 19% gen-over-gen instruction per cycle improvement, or IPC improvement. So that would indicate over 10th gen. But it says here that for the highest frequency cores and headlined by the Intel Core i9-11900K, these processors will bring even more performance to gamers and PC enthusiasts at launch in the first quarter of 2021. So we can assume that the 19% is over the 10th gen process, which is 14, however many pluses they've added to it. So I have some theories now, and that's all the information we have on 11th gen. And I wish we had more. Again, this is it's just, they're sprinkling crumbs of information, which really kind of stinks, but whatever, it is what it is. I have some predictions here as to why they chopped 2 cores off. When it comes to 10th gen, there was an overlap there between the X series, which is X299, which is several years old, like 4 years old now, I believe, which is an older platform. There was a 10900X, which is the X series platform, and it had the benefits of more PCIe lanes. It has quad channel. And then there was the 10900K, which was also a 10-core 20-thread mainstream, which was dual channel, and it had 16 lanes, and I think also it had 4 storage lanes as well, which I forgot to mention, 1100K also is a 20-lane CPU, 16 lanes for PCIe, 4 lanes dedicated for fast storage. Not really much of a change there. But if you've tried to buy a 10900K since it launched, you'll notice that it quickly went out of stock, and just like, it was like the first product before the CPU or the GPU craze and the 5000 series AMD craze to go out of stock, and people just go, I can't find it anywhere. What is going on? And I have a theory that that particular CPU in that generation was a stopgap. between the 9th gen and the 11th gen, that they had to do something. They had to say something, they had to exist during AMD's onslaught of forward momentum that they were generating in their CPU department. And so I firmly believe that the 10900K and the 10900X overlap was probably never fully manufactured to the degree at which people were going to potentially buy it. And so, whereas it was a popular part, I also feel like there were yield concerns. I don't feel like they were able to give the up to 5.3 gigahertz single core and 4.9 gigahertz or the 4.8 gigahertz all core, because 10 cores and 20 threads at that frequency, at that process size, is difficult to say the least. It's one of the reasons why that process size on the more core dense CPUs, like the 12, 14, 16, 18 core processors that we'd seen, and the 3175X is an even older process, having 28 cores. As someone that has a 10980XE and a 9980XE and has tried to overclock and on water, it's insane how hot they get. And so I feel like there was a bit of a process issue there in trying to get the yields they needed to have the amount of CPUs to meet the demand, which is why we saw the introduction of the 10850K. The 10850K, for all intents and purposes, was exactly the same as a 10900K, but with a 100 megahertz drop across the board. And so it was easier to create a new processor, which is literally identically the same as a 10900 with lower clock speeds available to them, was able to meet the demand by reducing the clock speed and not really so much reducing the price. I firmly believe because of that scenario is why we've seen them now drop back to 8-core 16 thread, which is kind of a curious move considering the fact that one of AMD's biggest flaunts is its productivity value. Because of the dense core counts that you can get, the IPC improvement that they had over Intel, giving you more cores and more IPC even at a lesser clock speed, making them a much better value. But the up to 19% IPC increase, Phil and I did the math, still puts them about 4% technically behind AMD clock for clock. However, clock speed affects how many cycles that you can get done in the same amount of time, which gives you more relative performance that's faster because Intel still has a fairly commanding lead on clock speed. So we might see Intel actually take back the crown in terms of gaming being the gaming king if the IPC improvements hold true and the clock speeds that are not mentioned here, by the way, match what we got with 10th gen. So those are some of the reasons why I feel like they've made these changes. This is what we sort of have to look forward to. I know it was a lot of speculatory predictions here based on very high level information considering it's only a preview. However, these are the types of things that I nerd out over and the things I think about when I read this information, and I wanted to share that with you. So there you go. That's what Intel sort of talked about today. They obviously had a much longer keynote with lots of slides and pretty graphics and things, which, is all fluff in my opinion. We will be taking a look at some laptops. I mean, I am a laptop whore. I've got laptops everywhere. I love laptops. As somebody that's traveled, trust me, I appreciate a nice, strong, powerful laptop. With that said, guys, let me know what it is that you're kind of interested in with 11th gen. Are you even going to consider 11th gen 11900K, knowing they've now got 4 threads less than the previous gen, making productivity seem like it would make way more sense going AMD? Or if you're gamers now, knowing that there could be, again, up to 19% IPC improvement, giving you better potential FPS on Intel, if you just bought an AMD rig, are you kicking yourself that you should have waited? Or are you going to just not look back and be like, I'm happy with my system? Because one of the things that we still have not gotten to verify here is stability. Because the last thing I want to leave you with is think about this. If this was supposed to come out in Q2 and be announced at the end of Q1, and they pulled it up 3 months, that's 3 months less R&D time than motherboard manufacturers have for creating the motherboards and then getting the BIOS ready and having general stability at launch. Let's just say through the grapevine and the birds that fly my way, they're worried. They're significantly worried, and you might want to be worried too.